All right, this is a recording of LAWS12065, exam preparation class, trying again. I'll just reiterate again the point about answering exam questions, whether they're essay style or whether they're legal problem solving. You need to focus on identifying what are the key words or the key bits of the factual matrix. It's acceptable to use subheadings in your answer to structure your answer. Remember, it's an exam, and even though you have longer than the 3-hour invigilated exam, it's still an exam, it's not an assignment. So you're intended to use the materials framework in the course. It's not intended for you to go and do extensive research. Referencing, similar to an exam, a sit-down exam, referencing, consider that to be more minimal. We don't need all of the reference that you might provide for an assignment, but you do need to show the law that supports your arguments. That is the case law and the sections of the legislation as appropriate. One comment about the reference of how you discuss the case law, in looking at some of the answers to the quiz questions, some students decided to start giving a narrative about the facts of the case. That really is not really what you need to be focusing on. You need to be taking the essence of the case, and you need to be addressing the factual matrix of the particular question at hand, okay? And that's what's important. You have to take the facts of the case and discuss them as appropriate against the matrix of facts in the question you're discussing. I don't want to just read narratives about the facts of a particular law case that you happen to think is an appropriate authority, okay? You need to get on and focus on answering the question, focus on teasing out the issues, using the law to try and resolve those issues. Sometimes the law might be sort of in this way and that, and so you need to, at the end of the day, possibly give that sort of balance to some extent, but also in the end, what you need to do is you need to have a position, and you need to explain how the law supports your position. And you know, you might use words to the effect of, on balance, it can be argued that, or it can be concluded that, or this is how we should understand the way this issue should be resolved. And you need to progressively move through each of the issues, okay? And tie them up, finish that issue, and then move on to the next one. Tie that up, finish that issue, and then move on to the next one, okay? I'm not going to specify any real word length for the exam, just in the same way that you wouldn't in an invigilated exam, but you have to approach it in a reasonable way, okay? It's not intended for you to write 50 pages. It might seem a bit excessive, but what is reasonable in the circumstances? The whole purpose of the take-home exam in this context with online education is to facilitate the ease of doing the exam by yourselves, rather than having to require you to go to an examination centre and sit the invigilated exam. The other thing is that you know, we can get responses from you that hopefully are more thoughtful, certainly obviously easier to read because they will have been typed up and into a certain structure and form, and not just handwritten, which is still the requirement for invigilated exams. The exam advice that I provided to you explained that the various topics that are being covered. I'm just trying to reply to a couple of the queries. And you basically, what you need to do is you need to be conscious of the context of the exercise, all right? The topics that I've advised in the exam advice indicate that the exam is covering the remaining topics in the course after the second quiz. That is, it includes topic 7, topic 8, topic 9, topic 10, and topic 11. and they're the topics that are covered by this exam. I'm just going to take a moment to reply to a couple of emails to try and get a few people online to this fresh recording. All right, we might get a few people join us, possibly not. We'll see. So those topics, they're the ones that the exam covers, and you know, in these last couple of days of preparing, just sending another reply. So in these last couple of days prior to the exam, you need to go back over these topics. You need to think about the central concepts in these topics. You need to think about the law that supports those concepts. And you need to go back and have a look at the tutorial questions. You need to think about which of those topics might lend themselves more to a problem-solving type question, which topics might lend themselves more to a discussion type question. Whilst it's true that any of the topics could arguably, I suppose, apply to both, have a look at the way in which the material is put together and try and anticipate that, okay? I think it's fair to say that to some degree there's an overlap in the nature of the material covered in topics 8 and 9, and both of those topics, as we indicated at the time, have a very strong emphasis on the role of equity and how equity intervenes in property disputes in various ways, but does so on a principled basis and only where it's necessary for equity to intervene to protect the interests of certain parties, given the nature of the facts and so on. The later topics, topic 10, is really about how property can be altered. There's a reference there. I mean, the topic 10, one of the central ideas in topic 10 is the doctrine of fixtures. There's also discussion of to what extent does a landowner have control over what's beneath the soil, and how can the landowner affect and govern airspace above the soil, and you do that in different and various ways. So that's also something that you need to just think about how questions might throw up the concepts covered in that topic. The last topic on the PPSA is really quite that legislation's quite new still. I mean, it was enacted 2009, but basically didn't become operational until 2012. I've provided you with some additional resources on the under that week on the Moodle website in terms of thinking about the array of issues involved in protecting personal property and security interests with respect to personal property. And also I've directed you to the website for the regulator, AFSA, and you should think about those further resources on the website for topic 11. And when I said earlier in the recording that it's expected that you work within the framework of materials, that means the framework of all the materials that I've given you and made available to you through the Moodle website, not just the casebook, but the any additional readings, any issues that might have come out of as a consequence of additional web links that I provided for you, and so on and so forth. So it's important to be aware of that. Okay. The structure of the exam, as disclosed in the advice, is that there is going to be two parts of the exam paper, Part A and Part B. And in Part A, you'll be required to do 1 from 2 essay type questions. So there's a choice there with regard to Part A, and I'm just going to have a look at a couple of the emails again. Sorry about this, but if we can get a couple of people to attend. Okay, all right. What I'll do is I'm just going, so what do I do here? Try and post the it's not going to work. I'm just going to do the recording. I think that's the best way. Okay. All right. So Part A has 2 essay-style questions, and you have to choose 1 out of 2, and it's worth 20 marks. Exam, of course, is for a total of 60 marks. So there's 1 essay-style question worth 20 marks. Then Part B has 2 questions, and they are problem-solving questions, and they're required to be done, both questions. So, we need to test your capacity to solve problem-style type questions, and so that's what I'm doing in the second part of the paper. So, and there's 2 questions, and each of those is worth 20 marks. And as I said before, you just need to give some thought and reflection to what topics lend themselves more to essay style and what topics lend themselves more to problem-solving questions. What else can I say at the moment with some of these technical issues, unfortunately, that we're experiencing this evening, and I apologise for that. I had anticipated the class running smoothly, but that hasn't happened. What I'll do, I think, is really one last thing. I'll obviously make this recording available for all of you, but I'll also, given the technical issues that we've had this evening, I'll just make myself available for online consultations at a time prior to the exam, and I'll make a decision about when I can do that, and I'll put a post on Moodle tomorrow, which is Tuesday, the 27th of May, about the time when I will be available, make myself available for online consultations in relation to the exam. The other thing I'd just say, particularly with regard to the problem-solving questions, that you should think about the dimensions at stake in terms of any factual situation that presents in the scenario, and explore those dimensions fully, and also think about the implications and the consequences of the connections between different characters named in the scenario. Some things might be more straightforward, some things might be less straightforward. And it's important to explore the complete range of implications and consequences of the factual scenario as it presents itself in the way that the facts have been constructed. A good way, possibly, I always have encouraged people to do this, is that to take the facts and to maybe construct initially, particularly the problem-solving questions, construct a diagram and a timeline, so that these strategies can help you to break up the information in a way that highlights what's going on from the perspective of why you're looking at these particular questions. And remember that we're focusing on property law, and we're focusing on the topics and concepts we've covered in the course. That's the intention of the assessment task. It's not intended for you to explore other areas of law that are not referred to in the course. I know that in this course I have extended the reach of the material in some cases, and that's if you believe that's relevant on the facts, that's fine. But if you identify other things that touch other topics of law that have nothing to do with property law, then that's not the purpose of the exercise. So, really, really focus in on the topics and the concepts that we've covered in the course, and try and be as precise and as succinct as you can be in your arguments. And remember that the old adage, if you like, that we're looking for, that you've identified the relevant legal issue, that you've got some law that supports the analysis of that issue, that you've indicated if there's competing law, how you should resolve that, and you've given a clear outcome on the issue, how it should be dealt with, how it should be resolved, and you've explained how the law supports that. That's very important. Yeah. So that's probably all I can do, given, unfortunately, the technical issues we've confronted this evening. This recording will be not as long as usual, but I think that's probably the best we can do. As I said, I'll indicate to you availability before the exam for online consultations, and all I just leave you with is just, good luck with the final. Do your best. It's not intended for you to have a sort of a mini breakdown over it, but just do your best. I want to see your ideas. I want to see it written in your words. I want to see how you analyse the problems, how you respond to the ideas presented in the essay-style questions, and how you're using the law and the framework of law to support an argument, to give a clear outcome or advice in the final analysis and outworking of your answer. It just, and in terms of length, as I would just reiterate again, write what you feel is required and necessary, but it's not intended that, that you're producing, 10,000 words or something like that. Okay, that's not, it's an exam. Please remember it's an exam. It's not an assignment. Okay. Now, another point that I would just like to make is that in terms of feedback on exam, because it's an exam and because there are requirements to try and get the exams marked fairly quickly so we can finalise marks and so forth, usually we put less feedback on exams, and that's really the method, the approach I'm going to take so that I can get the process finalised. But there'll be probably some comment, but not as extensive as has been. But I'll just give some thought as to how I might give a general feedback on exam at the end of the day, and I might actually possibly run a Zoom feedback session if people are interested in that, and then that can be posted to the website for people to have a look at. in terms of exam performance. I haven't fully resolved upon that, but that might be something that I contemplate doing. I mean, certainly you are entitled to feedback on exam. I've no issue with that, but the exam just is the nature of it means that it needs to be marked a bit, expeditiously to get the process finished. Very important for that to happen, and then for us to finalise all of the results, and also to for you to get your grades on the course so that you can progress with your studies. And I hope for most of you that means going on to land law in term 2, and some of you may also be think about doing conveyancing with me as well. Both of those courses are being run in term 2. And even for those of you, there's a comment, Grant raised an issue about the conveyancing course if you happen to live outside of Queensland. Look, my view is that I think that there are concepts there that are common ground in terms of conveyancing in various jurisdictions, land transactions in various jurisdictions. There are nuances of difference, of course, with the legislation and some of the procedures and whatever. But a conveyance is a conveyance at the end of the day. And if you have an interest in that area, then I think there's probably benefit in you giving some thought to doing the conveyancing course. Also, there's been a few queries about the materials for land law. The casebook, of course, is the prescribed casebook. It continues, and that's the reason I've chosen it for foundations. I've also added the textbook that goes with the casebook, Australian Real Property Law. It's an excellent book, and several students that have purchased it already said it's been very helpful. I've added that for land law, but Chambers is not a prescribed book for land law. It's a bit too general, a bit too introductory. If you've bought it, there are a couple of chapters in there that may be useful in land law, but we do go into things a bit more depth in land law in terms of the material we're covering. All right, so look, I might sign off there, and all the best with the exam, and I'm sorry about the technical issues tonight, but this recording I will put onto the Moodle website just as soon as possible, and I will send out an email to all students indicating that that's what I'm doing. All right, okay, bye for now.